Hello everyone! Today we're going to be jumping back into Standard with a Vampire Tribal deck. Let me go ahead and talk about some of the cards we've got here. So at the low end, we've got Voldaren Stinger as a 1-1 with first strike while attacking. We can additionally pay 3 mana and give it a pump to its power, making it a very strong attacker and difficult for our opponents to block. Voldaren Epicure is going to give us a blood token, which is going to let us filter through the top of our library and find better cards in our hand in the late game. It'll also deal 1 damage to our opponent on the ETB. From there, we're moving up to Slaughter Specialist as a 2-mana 3/3. That's a strong stat line. It is going to make a 1/1 creature for our opponent, but that's not going to be an issue for us. And whenever a creature our opponents control die, we're going to get to put a +1/+1 counter on the Slaughter Specialist. So this is going to be growing very quickly over the course of the game. We also have 2 Bloodthirsty Adversaries. There are 2/2s with haste, and we can pay 3 mana when we play it to get an instant or sorcery with mana value 3 or less out of our graveyard and cast it this turn. So talking about some of those instants and sorceries we have Lightning Strike, 3 damage, any target. Thrill of Possibility, we can discard a card, draw 2 cards, really push into that late game. We also have Vampire's Vengeance. This is a vampire-specific board wipe. We're going to deal 2 damage to each non-vampire creature and create a blood token, so lots of value for us there. Back to the vampires we've got Blood Tithe Harvester. This is going to synergize well with all those blood tokens we have. It can act as removal for some of our opponent's bigger creatures, and as a 2-mana 3/2, it's also a very powerful attacker. Vampire Socialite is phenomenal in this deck. It has Menace, making it evasive in combat, and it's additionally going to grow our vampires as long as we continue dealing damage to our opponents. Notably, things like Voldaren Epicure's trigger to deal 1 damage to our opponent is going to cause this +1/+1 counter effect with Vampire Socialite. Then we're moving on to Markov Baron. This has Convoke, so we can actually cheat it out a little bit early by tapping down some of the cheaper vampires we play. You can do things like play Voldaren Epicure, then tap it for 1 mana for the Markov Baron as well, so it gives us some extra value and board presence that way. It's also working as a Vampire Lord, giving that +1/+1 effect. Also, we can discard it to a blood token and cast it for its madness value, which can be really good in the late game. Now, moving down, we also have Curse of Hospitality. This is great for when we start running out of steam. We're going to enchant our opponent. It's going to give all of our creatures trample, which is great since they're going to be growing with +1/+1 counters from the Vampire Socialites and the buffs from the Markov Baron. And then when we do deal combat damage, we're going to exile a card for each instance of damage dealt to our opponent from their library, and we're going to get to potentially cast that on our turn. We can additionally play lands off of our opponent's deck this way. Very strong card. Then at the very top end of our deck, we do have Sorin the Mirthless. This is great for the 2/3 Vampire Flying Lifelink token. And additionally, the +1 is going to give us more value in our late game, help us stabilize. Now that -7, if we get there, is going to be great. 13 damage, 13 life can close out the game. But most of the time, we're going to be close enough to beating our opponent where we're not even really concerned about getting Sorin up to that 7, and the 2/3 Vampire token is going to be more than enough. Now, as for notable inclusions in the mana base, we do have Sokazan and Takenuma, because those are the fancy legendary lands within our colors. We're also running Secluded Courtyard, to which we will be picking Vampire, of course, and Voldaren Estate. Both of these are going to fix our mana for vampires specifically, and in the case of Voldaren Estate, we can even make blood tokens. Now, if you guys have been enjoying my content so far, make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all of my latest videos. And if you do like this video, make sure you hit that like button to let me know. Let's go ahead and see how this deck does. Alright, and here we are on the play. I'm okay with this starting hand. We'll go ahead and keep it. Start by letting our opponent immediately know what we're up to and play a vampire. Now, Voldaren Stinger is a great turn 1 play. Yep, looks like we're going to be able to get that damage here, get a +1/+1 counter with Vampire Socialite, but we're going to go ahead and play our next Secluded Courtyard on Vampires, swing out, and there's our Vampire Socialite. Now, unfortunately for us, our colored mana is only gonna be for our vampire spells, so Sorin and Lightning Strike are going to be dead draws for us. But I am gonna go ahead and pass the turn here, go ahead and attack. If our opponent chooses to block, I'll just pump the Voldaren Stinger. Sure. I'll happily skip a turn to get rid of that. Everything's looking good so far. We go ahead and flip the etching. Now let's see if our opponent can hit their next land drop. They do. There's a Raw Priest, sure. Looking good so far. And a Brave, so they killed the Vampire Socialite. That's fine by me. Unfortunately, no red mana for Vampire's Vengeance. Let's start by moving to combat. Okay, deal our damage. Let's play out the Socialite, continue to grow the Stinger. Voldaren Stinger is starting to be a large threat. Now, if we can get another red mana, that's going to be absolutely great. I would love to hit the board with Vampire's Vengeance. Sure, no blocks. You can keep dealing your damage. Right now, we have the tempo advantage. Oh, this is beautiful. I'm gonna go ahead and swing out. End the turn. I'm gonna save Vampire's Vengeance because our opponent is known to have creatures with power 2 or less. We are faced with an interesting decision. We'll go ahead and let this resolve. Let's see if they have another 1-mana play pre-combat. They do not. Vampire's Vengeance it is. Clear the board. Next turn we can use Lightning Strike to get rid of Kodama if we want to. I do kind of like that. I'm not gonna let our opponents ramp off that. Deal some damage. Go ahead and end the turn. Now we can get rid of the Sorin since it is going to be a bare minimum 2 turns before we're going to be able to cast him with our Blood Token. Sure. Plays out the Devastator. That's fine. Tail Swipe. That's also fine. So we do lose our Vampire here. Okay. Yep. I think we are going to crack the Blood Token, get rid of Sorin, try and find something that we can actually use. And I'm going to go ahead and play out Voldaren Stinger. And then we'll Convoke for the Baron so we can hold up Lightning Strike. Now, I can use Lightning Strike on the Shivan Devastator. Yeah. Let's go ahead and do this before. Not that it matters. Alright. Move to combat. Let's just deal the 1 damage this turn. And I do want to make a Blood Token. We'll play out a land. The Blood Token's going to be playing for our next turn. Our opponent's top decking as well. So if we can generate those Bloods, we're going to be having better top decks. Let's go ahead and play out Markov's Baron. We'll also activate Voldaren Stinger's ability. Swing out for 4 this turn. We are now threatening lethal next turn. Opponent's Kamano's not going to flip yet. Let's see what this card is. If this is a land, we have it. Alright, no. Chandra dressed to kill. Our opponent still has a chance to do something. Yep, exile the top card. It is a land. Let's go ahead and activate Voldaren Stinger, activate Voldaren Stinger, and we've got it. Alright, and here we are on the draw. I am going to go ahead and keep this starting hand, though. It looks pretty good. We've got the mana to cast our Sorin, we've got Voldaren Stinger, and we drew a great turn 2 play as well. This is looking great. Opponent's on a red deck. Could be mono red. Nope. Okay, Boros deck. Might be looking at some equipment. Don't know yet. We'll be finding out shortly, though. Yep, they are playing an equipment deck. That's fine by me. Let's go ahead and play out our other land, and I'm gonna go ahead and swing with the Voldaren Stinger. Okay, get that damage through, play out Blood Tithe Harvester, and we'll go ahead and pass the turn right here. Depending on what our opponent does this next turn, that'll determine what we do. We can play out the Epicure and Markov Baron. Sure. We also have Vampire's Vengeance. I do like this. I think Vampire's Vengeance is the way to go. Clear the board, let us get all of our damage through. Looking pretty good. Sure. Yep, this is fine. Got a couple different options for our next turn. We can play out the Sorin, we can play out the Epicure and Markov Bear. Interesting. Additionally, we can always just swing out with the Voldaren Stinger first. I think we're gonna go ahead and do this. If our opponent blocks. Awesome. They do not. Let's go for the Vampire Socialite here. Let's go for the Voldaren Epicure with that +1/+1 counter. And let's convoke out Markov Baron, so he will also have that +1/+1 counter. We've now built a very strong board. I am liking this. Next turn we can play out Sorin. That should start giving us some late game value. We're also guaranteed to get some amount of damage through next turn. Yep. It looks like they're just passing here. Alright, so let's start by moving to combat. I'm gonna go with the creatures I know my opponent can't trade advantageously with. So we'll go Socialite and Stinger. Yep. That's fine. They'll trade on first strike damage. Okay.
Feel the energy of battle. Then
depending on what our opponent does, that's gonna structure the next part of our turn. Sure. They can exile the Socialite.
My judgment
okay,
is
that's
fine.
Gonna be a trade. Let's play out Sorin. And I think best option here is the Flying Vampire.
You fight for me now.
Looking very good. Alright, opponent replays Kemba, so we're right in the same position as we were before. Except this time we now have a Flying Vampire with lifelink. We're going to be able to use this to kill the Wandering Emperor. Let's plus Sorin this turn. Okay, it's a land. We'll go ahead and reveal that. I'm going to crack a blood token to get rid of this. Now the reason I'm doing this pre-combat is we could draw a card that impacts what we want to do. Okay. I'm gonna kill the Wandering Emperor. That's fine. Okay, play out the Voldaren Epicure. And now we'll play out Vampire Socialite. Notably, our opponent's lost life, so we're gonna get all those +1/+1 counters. And I'll play out an additional land. Things are looking good so far. We can chump block Kemba if we need to. We've got a bunch of damage on board as well. Opponent's down to only one card in hand. Also very strong for us. Yeah, we're gonna keep Sorin alive. Chump with the Epicure. Most importantly, this is tapped down Kemba. Okay, Skrell, sure. Alright, well, Curse of Hospitality is a phenomenal draw for us. Let's go ahead and put that on our opponent. All of our creatures are now going to have Trample. Now, I'm going to go ahead and swing out this turn, all at our opponent. This is a guaranteed 9 damage. And we're also going to get to look at 3 of our opponent's cards off the top and be able to cast those. Now we may be sacrificing Sorin for this swing, but this is going to be one of the best options we have for dealing damage to our opponent. Alright, no blocks, so we bring them all the way down to 3. Alright, couple of different options. We can go ahead and play out the Batter Fist. It's gonna give us another blocker for next turn. And we're gonna minus the Sorin to make our Vampire. It's gonna enter with a +1/+1 counter because of the Socialite. And we are presenting lethal on the board, so our opponent's gonna need to have a pretty strong draw capable of dealing with our Flyer. Okay. Nope. So our opponent needs lethal on us this turn. I don't think they will. Yep.
Show them how we greet our enemies.
Looking good. We've got it. Alright. Looks like we are on the draw here. I'm going to take a mulligan because I do want to be seeing a couple more lands. Let's keep this bottom Sorin. This looks much better for us. Let's see. Opponent starts with Skrelv, right? We're going to start with a Voldaren Stinger. The fact that our opponent started with Skrelv makes me think Vampire's Vengeance is going to be very strong for us. And we will have the mana to cast it. Let's move to combat. Vampire Socialite. Get that +1/+1 counter on Voldaren Stinger. Things are looking pretty good for us here. Okay, so we're playing up against an Esper deck. Things looking pretty good. Voldaren Estate. Now I can play out Markov Baron. I think we're going to go for the Markov Baron here. This is going to buff both Voldaren Stinger and the Socialite. Yep, no blocks out of our opponent. Looking good. Okay, that is a Shielder. Now, fortunately for us, we can potentially do a very funny thing here. I'm going to go ahead and swing with the Socialite and the Stinger. Best block for our opponent, based on what we're going to do, is going to be Vampire Socialite double blocked. Worst block for our opponent is Shieldred blocks Voldaren Stinger. Let's see. We have the Vampire's Vengeance. Nope, they're just not going to do anything. Makes sense. When in doubt, no need to do anything too crazy. Let's go ahead and play out another Vampire Socialite. It's going to enter with a +1/+1 counter, and put a +1/+1 counter on everything. And then I think I'm going to go for another Voldaren Stinger here. Voldaren Stinger is a better attacker, and I would rather keep Voldaren Epicure back for its 1 damage on ETB. Opponent is gaining some life here, and that's fine. Now I am concerned about the potential for a board wipe, but it doesn't look like it's coming. We're in a pretty good spot. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move to combat and swing out. Let's see what our opponent does here. Okay, so they can destroy a creature with Urtok. Yep. My guess is Markov Baron. No, okay. Vampire Socialite. That's fine. We'll draw a card. Lose 2 life. This is also fine. I'm going to go ahead and use Vampire's Vengeance here. This is going to stop Urtai from blocking. Means our opponent can only block one of our creatures. This should give us lethal now. Let's see. Yep. We've got it. Alright. Alright, here we are on the play. This looks like a good starting hand, so I'm fine keeping this. We're going to start by giving up the Gambit and playing out a Vampire. It's going to be Voldaren Stinger. Puts us in a good spot. Okay, we're going to play out Voldaren Estate. It's Voldaren Tribal. Post-combat, we'll pay the 1 life, get our Vampire Socialite out on the battlefield. Having a creature with Menace and a creature with First Strike is going to bode really well. If our opponent's playing a mono-white deck that's based on developing creatures, we're in a very good spot. Alright, well, this looks pretty good to me. Let's go ahead and move to combat. We'll swing. Opponent can trade Thalia with the Voldaren Stinger if they want to. I'm okay with that. They cannot deal with the Vampire Socialite. Alright, so they're just going to let all that damage through, and we're going to just play out another Vampire Socialite. Our threats are getting better now. Okay, well, there's a Skrelv, sure. And Coppercoat Vanguard. Yeah, no need to block there. I'm actually feeling really good about where we're at. Now, I can play the Bloodthirsty Adversary here to try and deal some extra damage, but I'm going to wait. Once we've dealt damage, the Vampire Socialite triggers are going to be much better for us. Okay, let's play out a Bloodtithe Harvester here. We have a very aggressive board. Sure. Everything's looking pretty good. Alright, now we are very light on lands here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a blood token, and I'm going to get rid of a Bloodtithe Harvester and attempt to find a land for us. And we do find a Voldaren Estate. Now let's think about this. Best blocks, opponent's gaining 5 life. Now I do think I want to play out the Bloodthirsty Adversary here. Now they can just block it with Coppercoat, but if they do, that's going to be an advantageous block for us. They could also block it with Thalia, and I'm okay with that as well. Sure, yep, Thalia into Bloodtithe makes the most sense. Okay. Nope. Opponent's thinking about their blocks very carefully. Okay, change it up once more. Okay. They'll have to double block because Menace, yeah. Sure, this is fine. Okay, trading the Thalia, also fine. Looking good. Yep, opponent's up at 5. Board's empty. With no Thalia, Vampire's Vengeance next turn should be able to clear away whatever their next blocker is. Yep. Looks good to me. Let's go ahead and... Ah, that's right. We do not have the mana we need to cast this. Let's go and swing out. And we still have it because Skrelv can't block with Menace. Alright everybody, I hope you enjoyed. As we saw, Vampires is a strong aggro tribal deck that does a great job of trading well with other aggro decks. We do run into a lot of issues when facing more mid-range and control matchups, since if our opponent is able to remove our Vampires, they're going to be able to effectively lock us out of the game. Now, we do have our curses to get us some more card draw into the late game, maybe even steal some value off of our opponents, which is a very strong closer. We also have Sorin for those flying vampire tokens, which will be growing over the course of the game with our other threats, which are also great ways to go through and win the game. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you have any ideas for another deck that you'd like to see me play, why don't you let me know in a comment down below. I'll see you all next time.